So we're here with Dan Brown, writer director of Your Lucky Day, which will be premiering at Fantastic Fest this weekend. Really enjoyed the movie. Such a good thriller. Really had me on the edge of my seat like the whole time. So I want to get to know you, and which films would you say were the ones that got you into filmmaking?
Oh, that's a great question. Let me think. I came on early. I'm trying to think of like what was the moment. I don't really know. Maybe like this might sound weird, but Akira was like a big moment. Like
Yeah.
the anime movie where I was like, oh, that's amazing. I had seventh grade. I had like an amazing weekend where I went over to a friend's house and we watched Pulp Fiction, Akira, and I think one other movie. And it was like, oh wow, it kind of reshaped my life. I think, and after that, I was pretty much on board with movies. Yeah, I think that was kind of like the big, I think, turning point for me in terms of like, oh, that's something I really want to do, and kind of maybe shape my life around.
Do think Akira is such like a big influential movie for sure. Same. When you first see that one for the first time, it's just something completely different.
Totally, it was like it blew my mind. Maybe I was too young to see it. I don't know, but it was just definitely like I'd only seen cartoons that were like a Disney thing, and then they show up and they're like a city and it looks amazing and everything looks crazy. Yeah, I'm just talking about Akira now, but yeah, no, I think that was one of those that felt like I was like a new person after I watched it, and I was like, oh, I really want to go. It made me seek out all sorts of stuff, and so I've always been kind of like trying to search out new movies, new experiences, and that kind of like seeing the world from somebody else's eyes was sort of just amazing, and definitely opened up me to like every type of cinema everywhere I could find. So like, it was one of those big ones for me.
I really do think it's such a huge, impactful movie. I do want to talk about how did Your Lucky Day come to be, like from the beginning of like the concept of the idea to where we are today with the film coming out of Fantastic Fest.
It's a long process. I wish it was a little quicker, but I think I had an idea for a short film years ago. So I directed that. It came out and it did really well. And then as these things go, like basically it started me directing commercials, and I didn't really get into like making movies. It ended up being kind of give into that. It just sort of becomes your life. So I actually directed a bunch of lottery commercials. I've done fast food commercials, all sorts of stuff, and just sort of it's a good experience, I think, in general. But I thought like I was learning how to make a movie, but definitely like the desire to make a movie kind of started creeping up really high. A few years ago, I got an idea for how to turn the short into a feature, and kind of there's a long, complicated story of like I was on a different movie, that movie fell apart, and then I made this movie. So like there's a few steps that had to happen, and then but it was a script I had written basically because the short had done so well. I felt like something I should, if I could make a movie out of it, and there was the right idea for it, I would do it. But if I was to make suggestions for anybody who wants to make a feature, I would have the short written, and then I would have the feature right on top of it. More like, what was that movie Whiplash, where like I remember reading his story where he had like hearing him was like he had all these steps, and I was like, oh, I'm really doing this wrong. Where he's like, I want to make La La Land, so I'm going to do Whiplash first. Before Whiplash, I'm going to have a short film. And I was like, I wasn't playing that kind of game, and hopefully I'm trying to catch up now. But definitely like having a plan like that made a lot of sense. And at the time when I did the short, I just wanted to make like a good short.
Yeah, I had read that you had started this as a short. This feature here, definitely you did an amazing job when it came to thrill aspect of it, waiting to see what's happening next, and the movie completely taking different turns as it went. So I really did enjoy that. Never knew where the story was going, and by the end, I was just in shock.
Oh, that's awesome. That's wonderful to hear. I was hoping for something like that. That was definitely part of, I hope that's how people feel about it, because I felt like there was an idea of how to like do that where we're always surprised, and it doesn't feel cheap in any way, I hope, but like where you're like, okay, that makes sense, but you also feel like, oh, it could go any which way, and that the ending wasn't set out from when you started watching.
Yeah, definitely did get that vibe for sure watching it. So what was it like on set making this film? Because I know it's a film that is very contained, but at the same time, the actors themselves are giving these performances, asks of the actors to really express themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe part of it is just the speed at which we were doing it. It was this is an indie movie, very small budget. Part of that's why it's a contained thriller to sort of keep us locked in. And so it was just very fast. We had 15 days, so it was just shoot as much as we could, as fast as we could. And so I think that just sort of brought a lot of urgency to everything. And then, in the moments where we could go outside or we could maybe set up a few shots a little bit more than we had time for in other places, I think there was really just the opportunity of like, oh, we got to get in there, we got to move quick. So there was already like an intensity to the set, and we're shooting nights, which I think also brings out like a certain type of like we're trying to get our days down, and we don't want to give too long of a day for everybody. So I think there was definitely just like a deep intensity with everybody who was on board to like, okay, let's make this happen and make sure that we get everything we need so that we can make the best movie possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think everybody here was amazing, especially Angus here. And it was just incredible seeing him from beginning throughout the whole movie here as well. Just like how he was as an actor.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was such a sweetheart. He was so helpful. I think I just said it was a very intense shoot, and it was, but he was just sort of like the heart and the kind of thing that would kind of bring us together. That were like, we'd have long nights and we're moving quickly, and the schedule was changing. A lot of the actors had TV schedules or had something they had to do. So like we were carving out these weird hours. We're like, oh, there's going to be a scene we're going to shoot, and just not in the order that it would have been preferred, or we would change it up suddenly because someone's schedule had to shift. And having Angus on set and he was just from Euphoria, so him just being like, oh man, this is what they do. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm going to come in and do on Euphoria. So like it added this like, for what felt like chaos, I think sometimes, even for me, it was like, oh, he was just like, hey, this is how it is. This is just like a normal thing. So it was good to hear from somebody who had been on a much bigger set than ours that this was perfectly fine. And he was just kind of rolling with it. And I think a lot of our younger PAs and even some of the other cast members really just took like, okay, that's a really big show. We know they have a lot of money. There's still chaos there. It's going to be okay. Just trust the process and it'll come through. So that did a lot, I think, for the atmosphere of the thing. And then just him as an actor, I think it was just wonderful to give him enough to sort of do and play with and like have all these different types of emotions and scenes and like, see him be really intense, see him be sweet and listening to people, to see like, him just kind of going through the whole thing felt really honored that I got to kind of like have that much of time with him, really like on, just to give him that much space to sort of play and make a performance out of it.
Yeah, completely agree. Just having that collaboration, chemistry, and it's definitely felt in the movie here. And we really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Really love the film. Can't wait for people to check it out. It will be at Fantastic Fest this week. So definitely worth checking out again for me in a big theater with a full audience. So thank you again for taking the time with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see it in the theater too. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Thank you again.
Awesome.